10 times out of 10, I would rather use a toy with someone else than by myself.
Right.
So we got the idea of like swinging and playing with other couples and things. And I'm like soaked in milk. And I was like, you gotta keep fucking me. I find trans women like so fucking hot.
Hi, my name is Bree Mills, and I am a porn director with a purpose. Now, throughout my career, I have covered just about every niche, and I've created some award-winning films and brands along the way. But now, I'm much more interested in getting to know the real people behind my characters. And that's because I believe adult entertainers can be some of the most powerful role models when it comes to sex ed, consent, empowerment, and wellness. By asking the right questions, our community can really help people better understand themselves. So that's the mission of this podcast. Let's get up close. Hi, Hailey.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to like the best icebreaker for meeting in person in the first time, even though we've talked a lot and you've been obviously working with us more and more. I am super happy to have you here on Get Up Close. So thank you for being here.
Very excited to be here, and I'm really glad to talk with you today.
Let's open this up with a true icebreaker. Tell me a fun fact about yourself.
Ooh. Okay. Well, I feel like I have this whole like sexual porn side to myself. But I did go to school for biology. So I have a biology degree, and that's like my like kind of like real passion, like quote unquote real passion. I love ecology. I love evolution. And so like I'm just like a big nerd, really.
All right. So this is now where we're going to take this whole conversation. What is it about ecology and evolution and biology that you're so interested in?
Great question. I think there's like a certain, it's hard to describe, but there's a certain like love affair I have with nature. And one of the cooler ways to like interact with that is through science and like through knowledge and like learning. Because the more I learn about an ecosystem, like the more it just like opens my eyes to how interconnected the whole world is and how much humans really belong with nature too. So I feel like there's like that love there that like bio people like really understand that, and like we really need that connection, and that's just like what keeps drawing me back to it.
Oh, that speaks so much to me, because I found, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, with how addicted we all are to our phones and to just our digital personas and everything, that I need to like at least once a month, once every 2 months, like disconnect, go out in nature, and just surround myself with it. And you're right that it has this healing, really fundamental healing element. So I feel you on that for sure.
Definitely.
What's your favorite ecosystem?
Ooh, I don't know if I have one, actually. I mean, I love California ecosystems. Like I grew up here. I grew up traveling all over the state, and like if I could go one place just for a day to be alone in nature, it would definitely be the Redwood forest, like up north in NorCal. It just has a special thing to it. Yeah,
all those banana slugs.
And the giant trees, and it's beautiful.
Have you been to Death Valley? I assume you probably have.
Yeah. I've driven through it once or twice.
There's talking about ecosystems there, where nothing is supposed to survive, but you find these pockets of life that's thriving. I can't remember the name. There's one particular trail with a I wouldn't call it a lake, but like a stream, but that has fish but it's like only a specific species of fish that can only survive in that water. Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I can hit you up for all of my California road trip details. Yeah, I do a lot of camping, so cool. I do a lot of national parks.
Spots.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Tell me about, you mentioned that you're from California. Tell me a little bit about what your upbringing was like.
Yeah, well, I mean, to kind of relate back to the bio stuff, both my parents are teachers and they teach biology. So like they obviously like encouraged that and kind of like sparked that love in me. But they're also very open-minded and like curious people. And I was always raised to be very like curious, open-minded, and like sex positive too. Like sex was never like a weird thing in our household. It was like I would ask my parents like, how do babies get made? And they would like tell me the real answer. And so like none of that was ever like hidden or like hush hush. It was always very open. And I feel like I'm like so grateful to my parents for being that way.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And I guess as a biologist, right, they could really come with, you know, a grounded response to your questions.
It was not anything me as 6-year-old would understand. It was like, well, there's an egg inside you and the man fertilizes. I'm like, what? And then I was just stopped asking questions because they give me the most technical explanation. And I feel like that was my dad's like defense mechanism as to me being like, why? And then I was like, I don't know what you're saying. So I just stopped asking.
But there's a lot of like as a parent, you know, I've found that everything I've sort of read in parenting books is like encouraging you to be like literal, factual, because otherwise if you kind of create nicknames or, you know, make exaggerations or lies about what's happening, you can obviously speak to the person's age level and what they're able to understand, but it's better kind of not to cloud it in mystery or magic. It's better just to say penis and vagina than come up with some nickname. I just call it the ingredients. That's what I call it. I'll refer to like, there's ingredients that get put together and then a baby gets made.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's good that you kind of grew up with that sort of openness. What are some of your earliest memories about your own, you know, obviously early forming of your sexual identity, maybe the first time that you experimented with masturbation yourself?
Oh, well, actually, it's kind of funny because, like, I don't know. I was always curious about, like, my vagina as a young person. And I remember a few times, like, touching myself and, like, being like, oh, that, like, feels like something. And I remember the first time I was like, I'm going to give myself an orgasm. And I don't know where I got this idea, but I thought that when women orgasm, like all of them like squirt. So I was like, okay, I need to like get ready. So like grab a towel. I like put the towel down on the bathroom floor. I'm like, I'm ready to like make a mess. Cause I'm like, I guess this is what happens when you orgasm. I don't know. And so I just remember like touching myself and like giving myself an orgasm. And it was very intense because I'd never experienced that before. And I remember being like, wow, that was like a completely unique and immersive and intense experience. And then I was like, I looked down, I'm like, I didn't make, nothing came out of me. Yeah. So I was just like a little bit confused. I was like, oh, okay. So like, I can just do this in my bed. I don't need to like lay out a towel and everything. So
yeah. And was there a big, like you mentioned that you kind of went in like, I'm going to orgasm. Did you learn about orgasms just from kind of getting factual responses, you know, in early sex education? Because that's one thing. I mean, I don't think I actually understood what an orgasm was until I was, you know, probably way too old, right? So when did you kind of tap into that there's a completion to the end of that?
I think I just heard about it in like when my parents would watch like late night comedy TV or like adult centered things and they make jokes about like coming and things. And like, also I didn't really know there was like a difference between male and female stuff. So I was like, oh, if men can come, like I can come too. Like, sure, whatever. And so I don't know if I really remember like learning about it the first time, but I just kind of was like, I knew there was like something that happened or some type of goal with masturbating. Yeah. So I was like, let's like go for it.
This is one of my favorite questions to ask because everybody's answer is different and it's really interesting. If you think back to like your earliest memory of pop culture or media and some kind of sexy moment that sparked curiosity, what was it for you?
Well, I was kind of in the generation where like Tumblr was my main exposure to porn. I feel like that's probably where I first started seeing it or like looking at it. But it was all like super kinky stuff. Like it was like bondage, like dominating stuff, like daddy dom little girl things. And I was like, is this what like sex is for most people? I was like, okay, I guess like sex isn't like cool or exciting unless it's like kinky. And so that kind of got instilled in me from that. But as I've like grown and developed as an adult, I'm like, okay, we don't always need the bondage. We don't always need the whips and the ties and whatever. It's like, I have a lot more fun having sex just like naturally in my own way than like what I thought sex was as a teen. Yeah.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about female sexuality? Well, sexuality in general, but particularly female sexuality.
You know, recently a guy asked me this question. He was like, how do men compete with toys in the bedroom? And I was like, okay, like, let's reel it back because that is the complete wrong way to look at it. And I feel like a lot of men kind of maybe feel this way where like their partner or like women will orgasm more from vibrators or toys and whatever. And maybe they feel a little bit intimidated by that. But I think the perspective they should have is that, like, if a man came into my room and he was like, what toy do you like? Let me use it on you. That's amazing. I'm like, let's hook up every day. If you're open and confident enough to like let the toys be a part of us interacting together, that's really something that can like take sex to the next level. And I think a lot of people feel maybe emasculated or some type of way about that. But I think if you can be confident enough to just integrate it and like be like, yes, I want to make you come any way that you like, I feel like that's like something that really needs to be happening more in the bedroom.
Well, and you mentioned the idea of like that kind of comparison, and I find like that happens a lot. We get a lot of those types of responses from male, identifying members and fans and stuff, where it's like it's always a comparison, and so like the toy is somehow replacing me, or somehow I am not the toy, when in fact it's really just an enhancement.
Yeah, and 10 times out of 10, I would rather use a toy with someone else than by myself.
Right.
Like, yes, it's satisfying alone, but it's like way 10 times more satisfying to have someone else use it on me while they're also kissing me or touching me or doing other things. It just brings that experience to like the next level. And I don't know, I feel like it's just a good way to connect, and it can be connecting. It doesn't have to be a competition. Do
you think that it kind of goes back to that feeling of like that female sexuality is something to be like possessed, or it's not something that can exist without the man, or something like that? Like, have you encountered a lot of that in your own experience?
Yes and no. I feel like since people now talk about sex on the internet all the time, there's definitely a lot of men who are like getting that idea, and they're like, oh, like I don't have to be like, it's not all about like me being there. It's about like us together. So, I mean, like it's a mixed bag. Yeah.
You mentioned that Tumblr was your first eye opener to the world of porn, and that you saw a lot of GIFs, probably like a lot of spicy GIFs, and that over time you've kind of realized, oh, okay, well it doesn't have to always be like, super kinky. It can really be a spectrum. Can you speak to a little bit about, from your earliest days of curiosity, asking questions, discovering Tumblr, exploring your own sexuality, to where you are now? How has your sexuality evolved over time?
I think like the biggest thing has just been confidence, especially when it comes to communicating, because like being a young person, like 18, 19, it was like very hard for me to like maybe find my voice in the bedroom. But I've realized that when I do communicate, it just makes it better. And it's like, if you're with someone who doesn't listen to you and doesn't want to have that communicative, like open relationship, then they're not even worth having sex with. Like, I need to like seek out people and have sex with people who are open to that and like are down to like play and like have fun and explore and do different things. And so I feel like growing that confidence by having different sexual partners and just by masturbating on my own and things like that, it's really helped me be able to express myself better, and then like take that expression can take the sex to like the next level. Yeah. Well, and it's something that like needs to come with experience, right? Because not all of us, especially from most of our upbringings, you were really fortunate that you had like sex positive parents that would talk about stuff, but a lot of people just don't even know how to broach the subject. Yeah. Right. Like a lot of what I want to use this podcast for is just to help, sort of remind people it's not only okay to talk about sex or like to talk about consent and boundaries and everything, but it's kind of sexy. Like it's a really good way to enhance your sex life. Definitely. But yeah, it starts with just breaking down that barrier and actually starting to talk about it. Yeah. So what led you into sex work, Hailey? How did you get into porn, and bless us with being able to work with you? It's a fun story. So back in college, it actually all kind of started when I met my husband, Max Fills. And we started dating, but we didn't want to be monogamous, and we wanted to like still see other people. So we got the idea of like swinging and playing with other couples and things. So we just like go on Tinder and whatever the dating sites and like find other couples to play with. And we would like, they become our friends. So I would sending nudes to these people. I was sending sex clips and nudes and all these things to my friends. And I got like great feedback on those. So I was like, you know what, like maybe this can move into the OnlyFans space, because at the time also I like hated my job. Like I already quit. I needed something to do. And so I was like, I already have like some nudes and videos. Like I was just like, I don't know, let's just dive into OnlyFans. I was like ready to go. So I started a couple account with Max, and it's just like grown from there. And then I was doing OnlyFans for about a year before I was offered to do a scene for Brazzers. And so that was my first professional scene about a year ago, actually. And now I've been shooting a few times a month for about a year. And I absolutely love it. I love being on set. Like, I love being able to like show off my sexuality and like really embody my sexual self. It's just been a blessing, honestly. Yeah.
Okay, so you and Max meet. Did you know going into that relationship that you had kind of interest in swinging or polyamory, or was that something that you guys really discovered once you came together?
I knew I didn't want to be monogamous, but I didn't really have an idea of what that would look like. And for a while we were just like hooking up like without each other. And there was one time I met up with this guy and it was just not a great experience overall. And I came home and I was like really like bummed about it. And Max was like, well, like, we don't have to do this separately. Like, we could do it together. Like, we could do threesomes. We can do couple swaps. Like, like the swinging community is a thing. And I was like, oh yeah. Like, I mean, and to be completely honest, like a lot of times that's associated with an older crowd and people who've been married a while. But there's like I was surprised to find there are a lot of young couples who are interested in it or polyamorous or just open and new in different ways. And so it wasn't as hard as I thought to like find couples who are attractive and interested. And so that just kind of like became a thing really quickly.
Yeah, I have to admit that because I'm pretty outside of the swinging community. So like my knowledge of swinging are like those parties where you leave your keys in the, like, it's like so kind of like kind of retro and not hip at all, right? So I always find it really interesting when, you know, younger couples are like, yeah, we're into swinging. It's like, how did you get into that? Like, but of course, you know, the internet, you know, it's just not been a world I've dipped into. So, and that's cool. And so, you know, obviously he's a performer as well. Yes. You mentioned starting a couples account. What was kind of the process of did you start shooting studio scenes around the same time, or, you know, how did you feel about making that transition together?
Yeah. So, I mean, he's always kind of had an idea of wanting to work on professional sets and like be a porn star. And I was like, I was interested in it, but I was a little bit hesitant because we were doing so well on the OnlyFans already. I was like, why do I like need to do this other thing? But I don't know. He was really excited about it. And he was like, babe, like, we actually did our first scene together too. So that was a lot easier for me to step onto set with someone I'm already comfortable having sex with and already we know each other really well. So I think if it was someone else, it would have been like way more nerve-wracking and like maybe a tougher decision. But I'm really glad I decided to move into mainstream. Like it's been really fun. I love everyone I meet. Like I love coming to set and feeling like we're like a little porn family for the day. And yeah, I don't know. It wasn't ever that hard because I'd always imagined myself being a performer. I just didn't know where I would land. And somehow I landed in adult. And it really just, it is the place for me.
Did you ever do, like growing up, did you ever do any theater or different types of performance or even like team sports or that type of activity?
I was a dancer.
Okay.
So I did like musical theater, ballet. Tap was my favorite. I did a lot of performing in just the dance world. But it was so competitive, and I'm like more of like, I don't know how to I'm like more of a free spirit maybe, and the dance world is very like regimented. Yeah. So I didn't like take that very far. I quit like around the end of high school, but I do miss it sometimes. But I mean, being in front of the camera is kind of like, in ways it's similar to being on stage, and like, I don't have a live audience, but I know people are going to watch it. And I really like that. And
I asked that question because I did a lot of theater growing up, and I find like the vibe on set is so similar to when you've got like a casting crew doing like a theater run where you're kind of just all in together making this thing, you know? And that's actually one of the things I love. What I love the most about production sets is just that feeling of camaraderie and, you know, kind of it takes all of us to make this. And so I was wondering if it was the same for you. And you're a dancer. There you go. Big surprise.
And that's where I get my flexibility from.
Well, there you go. Fun fact. So this is a little bit in a different direction, but it always gets a funny response. Sure. You got to share, like, what's a memorable or maybe slightly funny / embarrassing moment you've had in your sex life that you'd be willing to divulge?
Oh, well, there was one time. So this was back in college. I had my own dorm room at the time. Like I was lucky enough to get a single room, so I could kind of just like bring dudes back whenever. And this was actually on Halloween. One of my friends like brought their friend over to party with us, and he was like a Marine. And so I was like, oh, okay. Like I don't know. He was well built, and I was like, okay. So
he was a
like,
Marine.
Yeah, we were flirting and everything. And so we go back to my room to fuck, and so I kind of had my bed like set up like right against my dresser, and college me, I had left a bowl of cereal on the top of my dresser. Oh, no. I think you see where this is going. But so he's fucking me like really hard on the bed, and like the dresser's like shaking, and then it's shaking, and the bowl of cereal literally falls right onto my face. The dresser like fell the other way. All my clothes fell out, and I'm like soaked in milk, and I was like, you gotta keep fucking me. I'm like, we can't. I'm like, this is so like random, but like so hot. I'm like, yes, destroy my bedroom, like ruin my sheets, like let's get messy.
What kind of cereal was it? That's what we all want to know.
I think it was Fruit Loops.
Okay, good.
It was Fruit Loops.
I was hoping that. That's what I pictured in my mind. Gotta add some color to that palette.
But yeah, I was not expecting that.
No, that's a pretty good response. I will say that's up there. It was
pretty embarrassing. He felt really bad about it afterwards. Yeah. He was like trying to help me clean up and everything. I'm like, dude, you did
what I wanted you to do.
Yeah.
So okay, you if you were a sex ed teacher for a day, okay, knowing, you know, especially again the place of privilege of being able to talk about sex growing up and how positively that influenced you. Mm-hmm. What would you give, like you had one day, what would your curriculum be? What would you teach people?
I mean, I definitely want to touch on like being like protected sex and consent. But I feel like one of the things that I always felt cheated out of learning in sex ed was about discharge. Like I remember like starting to have discharge, going through puberty and everything. And I'm like, why are my panties wet? Like, I didn't understand. I'm like, what's coming out of me? Like, is this normal? Whatever. And I remember just like having, like going on Google and like doing my own research to figure out what that was, because literally no one ever talked to me about it. And it was so confusing as a young person to be like, why is my vagina doing this? Like, and so that was always kind of like something I felt was lacking. And the other thing that I would also touch on would be bacterial vaginosis and yeast infections, because especially entering adult work, like I'm exposed to different things all the time. And so that's something I deal with regularly, but it's something I also had to educate myself on because I never learned about that in school and like what a yeast infection was, what are the signs of it, like, and it's a lot more common than STDs. And I feel like that's something that results from sex that young people should know about and be educated on, which like it really was never taught to me. And I was like, what the fuck, you know, like these are regular daily life things that all women deal with. And it just wasn't ever discussed. So
when I originally started the How Women Orgasm series, it was because I went onto Google and I typed that to see what kind of auto responses would come up. And it was so depressing that, you know, a lot of the questions that people would search would be, you know, really very basic questions about their own anatomy that has never just, you know, nobody ever teaches you. There's no clear place or resource to go to get that information.
Yes,
and then it is kind of like a mystery in there as to what's happening, right? And you can really, you kind of mess yourself up if you don't take care of yourself, you don't understand.
I also feel there's lots of like shame around it. Like people like talking about like, oh, fishy smell, like stinky pussy. Like that's like things people say in like a rude way. And so no one wants to like admit like, oh, I smell a bit different. No one wants to like admit that. Like for like, it's not like accepted usually in society. So I feel like that's something we should work to normalize. It's like, oh, if you're smelling a little different, maybe something's up. Like go check with your doctor. Like it's not a big deal because it happens to everyone.
Yeah. I have this dream of we recently launched a performer center on like the public side of Adult Time just to gather all of our resources related to performers and also to be able to share like all of our production practices and make sure it's very transparent for anybody who would be thinking about working with us. But I was thinking that we have a sort of video section of that. And I was like, you know, I think one of the things that we can do as a community is look at some of these subjects that there is such a lack of resource for.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't take more than, you know, getting even like a self-shot video and comping it together and putting it out or something, just to share and to talk about these subjects like what you just raised. So I think that's part of my mission for next year, is to see what good we can do just from, you know, what to put in your set bag, you know, how do you prioritize your own, you know, vaginal care and sexual well-being and like all these things that are super important. So it's that would be a very good subject. Good. Yeah. I would attend that class.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very good. So this podcast is created sort of in inspiration of our newest studio Up Close. That is going to be our first sort of take on unscripted content. We've done a lot of story-driven content. And I wanted to focus very much on showcasing authentic female pleasure and sexuality, knowing that is not just one thing. That really, at the end of the day, what that is a spectrum of whoever we invite, whatever they want to do. Mm-hmm. You know, you've been shooting mainstream content for a year. You've worked with, you know, different niches, different studios. How does that vision of sort of trying to showcase authentic sexual expression from women, how does that kind of connect with you and your own brand and what you're looking to do within this business?
I mean, I feel like that is my brand. Like I stepped into this just being myself, especially since I started with the OnlyFans. That's a very like personalized creator site. And so like I caught on very early from the start that people like the personality. People like you for you. They don't want you to be like the generic like porn girl, whatever. Like, so I think that's like that idea is what I take to lead myself like through everything I do, because I don't want to be anyone else. I don't want to pretend when I'm on camera. I don't want to be acting. I don't want to fake orgasms or anything like that. Like I'm just here to be myself and to have fun, and being able to share that with people and they enjoy it. Oh my God, like that's crazy. Like that has given me something. Oh my God, I'm going to cry. But no, seriously, like that's given me a certain level of confidence that I never saw myself having. Yeah. And like, I don't know, it's just really cool. I love all my fans.
and like you said too, like that, you know, when I asked you kind of how you got to where you are now, and it was the journey of just building that confidence, right? Yeah. And it takes an incredible amount to put yourself out there too, and to be yourself. One of the things I've realized the most about this whole experience is that it is not easy to ask people to be themselves, because sometimes it's a lot easier to just be a character.
Especially when the camera's on and you see someone hold up the camera to you, you're like, oh,
yes, I must be
this thing that I imagine. But that like the more I try to like let go of that, the better like everything is coming out. And so, yeah.
So you mentioned consent a little while ago as being something that, you know, is a real kind of obvious choice to discuss with folks. How do you feel, you came into the industry post-pandemic, we were talking about this before we started, and definitely our industry, like any industry, like anywhere in society, you evolve over time. And certainly we've had like a tremendous amount of growth and learning as an industry in the last decade. And how does it feel now to be like coming in sort of post-pandemic where stuff like consent conversations are not a nice to have, but they're really an essential? How do you feel consent is managed on the sets that you attend, and how has that inspired or influenced how you approach consent in your private life?
I mean, overall, I've had really great experiences, and like I'm really grateful for that. All my scene partners have been really good about communicating and making sure we're on the same page. And I think the thing I notice most sometimes too is a lot of times male performers will like consistently check in with me. Like if we cut, they're like, are you good? Like, how's it going? Like, do you need anything from me? And things like that. So I feel like that ability to like evolve my consent also at any time is like really important, because sometimes like you get into the moment and like, you're like, oh, this is a little bit different than I thought it was going to be. Or like, oh, maybe this isn't the most comfortable thing for me. So I don't know. I think it's been really good experiences, and being able to just be like, sit down with someone and be like, okay, what do you like? What do you not like? Like, what can I not do to you? And things like that. It's just made that even easier when in my personal life, I'm like, oh, not today. Yeah. Like, and I feel comfortable saying that, because it's like, neither party wants to do something that someone's not enjoying. So you got to make sure that baseline is there. And then like, if someone's like not enjoying something, like I don't want to keep doing that. Like, so I don't know. I think it's been really good, like seeing everyone like care so much about the consent. Yeah.
How do you prioritize your own sort of sexual health and well-being these days, especially now that you're doing, you know, both OnlyFans stuff, studio scenes?
Yeah. Sometimes it can be a lot, and sometimes it gets overwhelming. So I feel like the main thing I tell other girls too is like, don't be afraid to take a break. Like if you need a week off, if you need time off for your body to just chill, like that's important, because there's been times where I've pushed through things, or like for example, I got in a car accident last year, and it was very, very minor. Like I was completely fine, but I had some like bruising on my hip, and I was like, whatever, like I'll just keep working. Like it doesn't hurt that bad. And it kind of like became an issue. Like it became an irritation to my body because I didn't give myself that time to rest. And so it's like, it's just really important to put your body first, even when it feels like you're missing out or you're not making money or stuff like that, because your body is like, my body is my business. So that always has to come first. Even if I feel like, oh, I really wanted to do that scene, or like, oh, I really wanted to do this collab. But at the end of the day, like there'll be more scenes, there'll be more opportunities in the future, but I only have one body to take care of. Yeah.
And if you burn it out, then you're not going to be doing any work afterwards. Yeah, for sure. What brings you the most pleasure in the bedroom these days?
I think one of the things that I've like gotten to love even more is like kissing. And I know that sounds simple, but like a lot of the times when you're performing, like there isn't really that opportunity to like have that kissing and like the eye contact, because we're trying to like show like what's happening. I'm trying to show penetration, you know? And so whenever, like, in my personal life, I get to, like, have sex, I'm like, let's just make out the whole entire time.
Yeah.
Like,
as close as
don't
possible.
stop kissing me. I'm like, let me stick my tongue in your mouth. Like, I like the intimate moments and, like, the cuddling and, like, eye contact and, like, touching. Like, it's really become more about the details.
I'm just being on the other side of the camera, it's often a struggle that as a director, because we often, probably one of the most commonly requested points of feedback we get from fans is more kissing, more kissing, more kissing.
Yeah, really.
And then so we even have some series that are literally like kiss in the title. Like it's like, okay, this one is really about kissing, but it is really hard. And almost everybody, you know, on their yes list and everything's like, I love kissing. But when the cameras start, it is hard to get it. And do you think it's because I hadn't thought about the idea of, you know, we're so conditioned, or performers are so conditioned to like kind of allow the camera to see that kind of breaks the ability to get close and be intimate?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of about balance and timing, because there's certain times like when you're transitioning, or like when you're like at the beginning, the foreplay stage, where there are moments where you can sneak in the kissing a little easier. Yeah. But yeah, it's a tough balance to strike, because I do want to make sure I'm like that you can see my pussy and everything, but I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, we're gonna have to collectively. We'll have to figure out how to get. Maybe it's literally a series where it's like you can do nothing else but just kiss. Yeah. That could be a good one. All right. What you mentioned that Tumblr was like kind of your first porn that you saw. Did you watch other forms of adult content before getting into your own? If so, what were you into then? And then flash forward to today, can you even still watch porn, or what kind of porn are you into today? Yeah, so like I was looking at a lot of like kinky shit on Tumblr, and then eventually like I just started looking things up on Pornhub. I'd watch like, it was kind of like a good variety. I like gangbang porn. I like girl stuff with like strap on. I like trans porn a lot. Like, I find trans women, like, so fucking hot. Oh, that's good. I've booked you for a bunch of those, so good. And then, but, like, now when I go on Pornhub, I'm like, oh, that's my friend. Like, that's my friend. I'm like, wait, like, all these people are, like, I know them now. Like, I know their personality. And, like, I know for some people that's, like, a turn on. But for me, it kind of, like, takes it out of it. Because I'm like, oh, you're so cool. Like, we were talking about this cool thing on set. And, like, I like you as a person. So it's not, like... That's not, like, sexy to me. So, like, I don't really watch much porn anymore. And if I do, I tend to watch hentai. Number one response. Yep. Yeah. Nobody I know. It's always the number one response. I'm honestly not surprised. Yeah.
What do you think it is about hentai, though? I mean, apart from the fact that you don't know anybody, is it because of the kind of, because it is a space where there can be a lot more taboo subject matter, but it's obviously like in a certain packaging. Like, what is it about hentai that gets you?
I mean, I like the exaggerative nature of it. I feel like that, like, and most porn is a little bit exaggerative because that's kind of like what makes it hot, is that it's like the extreme. So they're always chasing those extremes. And so it's just like, every single shot is also like perfectly done. And there's been times where I've like looked at a thing in hentai, I'm like, that's so hot, and tried to recreate it in real life. And I'm like, this is not how physics or like bodies like even work. It just like looks good. So I like that aspect of like, it's like almost not even reality because they can draw it in a way that like, it looks like something that could never happen in real life. Yeah.
So you're going to be a big fan of like augmented reality, mixed reality porn when it comes out, where you can be like real life, but have a huge appendage from now to the next room.
I guess it depends like how that ends up looking visually. Because sometimes I find those like to like kind of end up in the uncanny valley where it's like not really human, but like sort of human. And then I'm like, it either needs to be art or real people. I'm like, I'm hard. It's
a hard line
in between. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know.
What's been your favorite scene that you've shot so far?
That's a tough question. Cause like, I've loved every scene I've done. And I feel like I don't want to like, I still love my very first scene that I did actually with my husband. Yeah. Like, and I was actually I was on the browser's website today and I just saw it and it was at like 99% approval. And I was like, I feel so honored. Like, because that was like the first, I went into that like not knowing what a set was like and everything. And I was like just ready to like give it my all. And I feel like I really did perform great that time. And like, it's a favorite because I love working with my husband. We did like a couple different things. We did like a shower portion. We did some bed sex. So it was like, I feel like it showed a good amount of my variety. And like, I'm just really proud of that scene. Yeah.
What was the from that first set experience, what was the thing that surprised you the most about being on an adult set?
It wasn't creepy.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like a lot of like, when mainstream media portrays porn, it's like, it's full of creeps, like everyone's on drugs, like they say all this crazy shit. And I was like, I didn't expect it to be like that, but I also just didn't know what to expect because I'd never been on a set for like any film or theater or anything. So I was just going into it like, we'll see what happens. And I was pleasantly surprised that everyone was super nice. Like everyone was helpful and like open and fun. And like, I don't know, like most porn crews are like super chill. Like they're like the type of people who just joke around, have a good day. And like that was really refreshing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say are your biggest red flags in relationships these days?
If someone doesn't like foreplay or like tries to rush the foreplay, or I've literally heard men say, they're like, I don't like eating pussy. Like I don't eat pussy. And I'm like, okay, bye. Like literally what? Like why would I be with someone who's not reciprocative? Yeah. I don't know if that's a word. Yeah. But like
reciprocal, but I get what you're saying.
Yes. Like,
and also why don't you like eating pussy? It's like literally the best thing in the entire world.
I feel like it's back to that stigma of like pussy being like stinky or like unclean or like dirty, which is like come on, like women are washing their stuff more than men are. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't make generalizations, but yeah. So I really feel like if you're not willing to give me that energy back and like go toe to toe with me, then it's just like, no, I'm not interested. Not worth it.
Flip side, what do you find the most attractive in people these days?
I feel like my number one thing is if we can like hold a good conversation. Like if we can talk about like our interests and we have the same interests and like it's just easy to chat with and easy, like if I'm just drawn into that person through conversation, I feel like that's the easiest way where I'm like, well, like we've been talking about grasshoppers for an hour, like you want to go bang, you know? I'm like, like it's really like those niche interests when they align that just like sparks that like really like cool thing in me.
So I have to ask you, why did you mention grasshoppers? Is there something in particular about grasshoppers?
No, I was just trying to think of
grasshoppers are wild though. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I recently learned about how their leg muscles work, and it basically is like similar to how a rubber band like stores all that energy, and then the muscle snaps back, and that's how they're able to like jump so far and like so high. And I just found that really cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like praying mantises. I find them really interesting. And not just because they eat each other or whatnot, but they're
very
just neat
successful
looking.
predators.
Yeah, they are successful predators.
Yes, and there's species of them on every continent.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. Since, you know, you haven't been shooting studio stuff for years and years and years, but I would say you've made a pretty good splash in the year that you've been and profile rising and everything. So a lot of people coming into the industry are going to see your work. They're going to see the stuff you did as a creator and with studios. And what advice would you have for new performers who want to get into the industry now that you have, you know, had a really sort of successful beginning of your career?
I think maybe like don't rush it. Maybe like find something that works for you that you like and start there, and it'll open more doors. Like when I started the OnlyFans, I never thought I would be like sitting here, but I was just like, okay, like let's start, like just start with something and then it'll like snowball really easily. So yeah, I think, and the other thing I like to say is that you don't have to do anything that you think a porn star should do. Like I always thought that like I had to do anal and that like I had to do this and that and that. But like it's really more about if you do the things you like and make content you're happy with and you share that, A, people will see that and they like to see people enjoying their content. And B, you'll attract the fans for the niche you're making. Like you don't have to do like the most popular things. You just have to do your thing and do it well.
Amen to that. That's that is such sage advice. Be yourself, make the content that you'd like, and those that will gravitate towards you are going to be loyal fans and not, you know, jerks you have to deal with for the rest of your career.
Like they say, build it and they will come.
Yes, that is right.
Yes.
Well, Hailey, you've certainly been building, and I'm so impressed with the work you've done so far. It was such a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you today. I can't wait to see what you're going to continue to do with Adult Time and every other company that's fortunate enough to work with you.
Me too.
All right, my friend. I will see you soon. Take care.
Thanks so much, Bree.
All right, I just got done speaking with Hailey Rose, who's an incredible creator, making big waves in our industry since she started. We learned that her first love was biology. Until she discovered a little something called Tumblr. And now she's making content that speaks to her and her fans, which is an incredible message to send. I was super excited to chat with her. I can't wait to hear what y'all think of the conversation. Let us know, like, comment, subscribe. You can, of course, support all of our links, especially Hailey's, because we've got them listed in the episode description below. And let us know who you want us to interview next, what kind of questions you want us to ask. We always appreciate your feedback. Until then, see you next week. Thank you.